Okay, welcome to Intro for Kabbalah. Today we're going to talk about the Sefirot. The Sefirot as being the vessels for the spiritual parts in us, the Nefesh, Ruach, Yechidah, and so on and so forth. Last time we spoke about the Yechidah and the Chaya, and we said that these are the spiritual forces in which the body could not receive because of lack of ability, to hold it, and these are what also called or mikif and so on. So, and we spoke about we spoke also about the nefesh and the ruach and the neshama and the different levels of them and so on and so forth. And because of that, somebody might think, or it might seem like that the what we call the lights of the spiritual aspect, the spiritual component of us, the nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama, are not really of the same value, the same magnitude. But the truth of the matter is that it's not really like that. The nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama are what we call or Eloki. They are the divine light. And the source of that light is really in the Ein Sof. The Ein Sof means the endless part, and the lights of the spirit, the nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama are different levels of magnitude of this light on the light of the Ein Sof. Now, of course, the question could be asked: if the lights of the nefesh, the lights of the soul, the spirit, and the neshama are equal, how could it be that we said that the nefesh, quote unquote, might seem to be lower than the ruach, which is lower than the neshama, and so on? So let's explain that. So let's say I have a source of light with a certain magnitude. I have a flashlight, gives a certain light. Now, I want to use this light to be able to lit few rooms, but I'm really interested that one room will get different strength of light, and the next room will get less than that, and the next room will get less than that. So what do I do? Let's say I have a big flashlight, a big projector. So it won't be able to do so. One of those like big giant projectors that they have, let's say, for example, when they do, road work and stuff like that. So if I put it in and I have one room after the other room, it's going to lit all of them. So what do? I'm going to but I want the last room not to be so bright. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put curtains. I'm going to put some separators between that. And those curtains and screens would really regulate the amount of light that comes, in which that every room or every hall will get what I designed for it to get. So those three rooms really receive their light from one source, but the curtains that I put in place really filter and reduce the amount of light that comes. So that's basically, so if we're going to take now what happens really is the light of the nefesh and the light of the ruach and the light of the neshama is one. And that comes from the light of Ein Sof. And the curtains are the Sefirot, what we call the Sefirot. Everybody talks about Sefirot and Chesed and Chokhmah and Keter and on and on and on, but nobody really knows what they are, or not everybody knows what they are. So those Sefirot are the vessels in which the light goes through them. The lights of Ein Sof goes through, and as much as the thickness, so-called, of the Sefirah is, or the outer layer of the Sefirah is thick, so is that the light that comes from it is going to be less intense until we go all the way down. So that's how it works. Now, it's not that every Sefirah, let's say, for example, I have, let's say, Sefirah number 1 blocks the light for Sefirah number 2. That's not the case. Because what will happen is, let's say, for example, sphere number 10 is going to be so far removed that it's going to have nothing, even if it was by itself very thin. That's not like this. Every sphere gets the light directly from the source. However, the thickness of the, call it the outer layer of the curtains, the blocks it, that's what determines how much does it get. So for example, the Sefirah of Malchut is the thickest of all Sefirot. And that, again, it's very important to understand. It's the individual Sefirah. And due to this thickness of that Sefirah, it's very thick, it really almost covers up completely the light that comes from it. Therefore, the light that comes from the Sefirah of Malchut is called Nefesh. And as we said before, the Nefesh is responsible for all the, call it the lower functioning, or lower quality functioning in the human. And therefore, the Sefirah of Malchut really represents the overall nefesh, the overall being, which is the eating, the basic bodily functioning, the most general of them. The Sefirah of Tiferet is considered to be more refined. And as the light hits the Sefirah of Tiferet, and then it projects the lights out, there is more superior light that comes from that, and that's called Ruach. And therefore, the Sefirah of Tiferet represent the overall, functioning of what the Ruach is, or the spirit is. The Sefirah of Bina is even more refined. And therefore, the light that comes out from the Sefirah of Bina is called Neshama. And Sfirat Bina, therefore, represents overall, or corresponds with the general concept of Neshama. From the Sefirah of Chokhmah, wisdom, comes the light for the Chaya. And from the Sefirah of Keter, which is so refined, comes the light for the Yechidah. So therefore, the Sefirot of the world of Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiyah are the vehicle, the vessels in which we reveal and we transfer the intensity of the light that comes from Ein Sof to the creations of those worlds, based on the world in which it is, and that's what it comes. Why? Because every world by itself, whether it's Bria, Asiyah, or Bria, Yetzirah, or Asiyah, there are 10 Sefirot. And those 10 Sefirot in Olam HaAsiyah, the 10 Sefirot in Olam HaYetzirah, 10 Sefirot in Olam HaBria, and so on. So therefore, there is a Nefesh, there is a Ruach, and there is a Neshama in those three worlds, okay? Now, we need to understand that the Neshama, we said, so far is the highest, right? But the Neshama of Asiyah is still going to be below the Nefesh of Ruach. And the Neshama of Ruach is still going to be below the Nefesh of, let's say, Yetzirah, and so on and so forth. It goes, it's stackable area. So, and if we translate it to what we're doing, so let's say an aspect of a nefesh, which is the lower one. So the neshama, the bodily functions, the person is very modest, and then so on and so forth. However, that is still lower than the functioning of nefesh of Yetzirah, right? Because in nefesh of Yetzirah, nefesh, we said, deals with all the basic bodily functioning. However, when you do so on a higher level, they become more spiritual. And this is how you elevate yourself into those worlds. So when we talk about those aspects, it's also for us an indication of how to elevate or to up a game in terms of what we're doing. Even the most superior thing, which is the neshama, could be below the lowest level of the upper or the world above it. So and it has to do mainly with the way and the intent that you do certain things. So you could reach a high level of, let's say, for example, of nefesh, of bria, is going to be so much better, so much more refined than the neshama of asiyah, which is going to be further down, all the way down. So since we have those 10 Sefirot of, let's say, for example, of Olam HaYetzirah, are so refined and they're so superior, and what comes from the 10 Sefirot of Olam HaAsiyah, right? Of course, it's going to be, after it's been refined, it goes up further. So, so therefore, this is how we create those scales, and this is how you elevate yourself from one to another. You will not be able to jump, let's say, from let's say nefesh of asiyah all the way up to neshama of bria. You can't do it. So the steps are there in the place, and therefore you could associate your actions and identify which part of your, if you're sensitive and you did some observation on that, in which part of your actions you really belong to. You know, how refined are your actions? Ultimately, it's all about actions, about what do you do. How refined are your actions? You could reach such a high level of refinement that even a basic thing like eating or multiplying and so on and so forth could become a high spiritual experience. And that's what makes, as they say, all the difference in the world. That's where we're getting into so many different ideas. Let's say, for example, when you eat on Shabbat, it's going to be different. Why? That's why you feel different things on Shabbat. And that's why you feel different taste of the same food that you eat on Shabbat during the week. Why? Because Shabbat by itself refers to a different world, to a higher world. So therefore, all my experiences on Shabbat are different than the experience throughout the week. And because they're different, it's the same thing, but I'm able to reveal layers, different layers. I'm taking other curtains that are around me, not to confuse it. And then that's, by all means, should not be taken wrong. It is like let's say I'm working right now, I'm sitting here, I'm talking to you, it's all good. However, if somebody will give me, let's say, some kind of a chemical to enhance my awareness, let's say, argument's sake, and I'm not advocating for that at all. Let's say I'm taking LSD. So my sensitivity to what I see, the lights, what I hear, what I see, what I feel is completely different. It's on a much higher magnitude. It's really, I can see colors that I didn't see beforehand. I can hear voices that I didn't hear beforehand. Lahavdil, of course, not to make the comparison, but to separate between the two, because it's not, I'm not advocating for drugs, and I absolutely against it whatsoever, including the soft drugs. It's all twisting of reality. But what I'm saying is that if a person has reached through observation such a high level of awareness that he's so sensitive, he would be able to, quote unquote, feel things. So much that if you enter a place, you could tell the place if this place is in Kedusha, in holiness, or it's not. You can talk to people and you feel by the way your body feels, because your body is connected to your neshama, and your neshama is connected to the body. It reminds me of the story. You all know the story about the princess who was looking for a place to sleep, and they put her mattress, and she said, and they put a little, lentil or bean under her thing, and they put all the way like 100 different things, and she still felt that there is something underneath it. It's a very nice kid story and a legend, but really comes to tell you that the true princess is not some kind of princess, Princess Jasmine or whatever it is. It is basically your soul, your neshama. Your neshama is a nesicha, is a princess. And the princess, when it's really still in that stage of being like that, royalty, would feel even a lentil under 100 curtains. So if you get in touch with your neshama, you refine it, you polish it, it would be like, for example, taking a rock, which is very rough. I'm not even talking about a diamond rough, it's just a rock. And then you put it into this tumbler that people put in with water, and it tumbles and so on and so forth. Instead of being the rock, all of a sudden you have this like shiny thing, shiny pebble. But in our case is we take something that is very thick, not see-through, and we polish it and we refine it, that it becomes clear as glass, that the light will come and reflect through it right away, and I'll be able to feel it. So when you feel things, all of a sudden, your whole existence, your whole awareness becomes on a totally different scale. You'll be able to see things, feel things, hear things that nobody is. And that's the whole concept of the bat kol, the heavenly voice. The heavenly voice comes out every single day. That we don't hear it. I'm not talking about voices in your head here. We're not talking about all kind of like psychotic breaks and so on and so forth. We're talking about spiritual voice, that you hear it without a voice. You hear the sound without the noise, without the actual wave. You just hear it, you feel it. That's the heavenly bat kol that comes out every single day from Sinai, from Mount Sinai. Now, sometimes how would you feel it? You feel a feeling in your heart. That my heart tells me I need to do so. So your ears didn't hear it. The most earthy thing of you did not hear it. But there are other receptacles and receivers in your body that actually receive things, and that's the heart. That's what makes you do tshuva and so on and so forth. And you could also examine your actions. For example, let's say you're about to eat something. How are you going to eat? How are you going to eat? Are you going to eat like a behemoth? In other words, like take the food, shove it in your mouth, like this, take the pizza, fold it in half, put it. This is not a refined method of doing so. Even if you're going to eat it with a fork and knife and cut like a little, it still does not mean, because what's the intent behind it? Am I eating for desire? Am I eating for becoming healthy? It's two different things. One, I want to be healthy. The other one, I'm eating for ta'ava, for desire. So you know that eating for desire, for ta'ava, is going to be on the lowest level of eating. But then what's the highest level of eating? The highest level of eating is eating, let's say, for example, lechem apanim, with the Kohanim ate it, or achila of davar mitzvah, which we don't look at this. Look, for example, at the act that we just had it, of eating matzah on Pesach. It's the whole achila, the whole eating is being elevated now for something of mitzvah. In other words, it's not just a regular eating. And when you treat it like this, what happens is you lose all the potential you had to become more refined. Or, for example, eating on Shabbat. Shabbat, it's very weird, because at the beginning you really feel like, there's good food on Shabbat. But all of a sudden you realize that the food is not so important, but rather that you eating the food on Shabbat. In other words, Shabbat is the most most important ingredient in your food. Not what your mommy put in, whether she put cumin in or she put the lamb meat in. That is absolutely nonsense. And the more sensitive you'll become, more spiritually sensitive you'll become. You realize that you could eat basically boiled fish with no salt and it will be heaven, because it's what you're eating is Shabbat, is not the fish. Shabbat you're eating, not the fish. Shabbat is that, because the achila on Shabbat is a mitzvah. So we're talking about the elevation of a mundane act, or like a behemic act, like animal. And I'm making it now into something spiritual, but by myself it's very hard. So we don't all have a choice to do so. And where would that be? That will be on Shabbat. On Shabbat is a chance for everyone, because we get this extra support. We get this extra neshama. We get 60th of another spiritual potential to become more spiritually inclined. 1/60th more. Each and every one of us. Why is that? To give us help to elevate each and every one of us in terms of that. That's what we're talking about. All right? So Rabotai, have a great day. I have a call from overseas. I will have to take this. If you have questions, get back to me.